Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the 30th anniversary of Doctor Who, the Children in Need special, Dimensions in Time, written by John Nathan Turner with his only written credit, and David Roden, and is directed by Stuart MacDonald. Like I stated, this is the 30th anniversary of Doctor Who. Now, Doctor Who had been cancelled back in 1989, 3 years prior, and many fans were wondering, writing to the BBC, whether they were going to do something special for the 30th anniversary. And I think it's very important to talk about the plans for the 30th prior to talking about Dimensions in Time, because Dimension in Time is known for being one of the worst Doctor Who stories in the entire franchise. It is considered by fans, by a majority of fans, to be an absolute mess and is completely ignored by some canon heads. What I feel about it, I'll get on to it later on. But I think it's very important to see where the story's ideas originated, to understand how he got such a rushed, strange and bizarre adventure. So, like I said, the BBC had many people write in to see if they could get involved in a 30th anniversary. The original plan was actually mapped out by BBC Entertainment. The subdivision that actually releases the Doctor Who videotapes at the time. This was going to be their first and only drama, to which BBC Drama wasn't actually happy about. The original idea was to have it a straight-to-video story. However, because of some funding issues, they were asking basically every department for money, and BBC Drama actually chipped in some money, allowing it to also appear on television, and there were hopes actually for it to appear on the big screen. Yes, the first official canon Doctor Who movie, even though there were some plans prior to this but never got made. This original idea was called Lost in the Dark Dimension. And the story would have revolved around the Fourth Doctor, just after the events of Legopolis. However, due to some time-travelling shenanigans, he didn't actually regenerate. And so it splinters off into an alternate timeline in which Ace is living in a world where Doctors 5, 6 and 7 never existed, and the Doctor was trapped, basically gone mad in an older Fourth Doctor body. Ace, the Brigadier, and the Fourth Doctor had to go searching through time and space to try and find the other Doctors to try and connect to themselves. And the original idea was that the other remaining living actors at the time, which was John Pertwee, Peter Davison, Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy, were going to have their scenes more or less a cameo to the story. Now, there are a few issues behind the scenes, mostly to do with money. Some of the budget was misplaced, and some of the funding, some of the maths on the funding didn't work out. That was the main reason. However, there was another big part into it, as the other remaining Doctor Who actors, specifically, I believe it was Colin Baker, who was the first to speak out, felt that the story was felt too much derived on Tom Baker, who everybody thought was the popular Doctor, the only good one into the mainstream. Actually, I think John Pertwee was in the mainstream anyway, like one of the great ones, the legendary ones, but everybody else felt like the Thing felt like a Tom Baker story with all these other doctors, and was really unfair to the other doctors, specifically Sylvester McCoy, the main doctor at the time. And so Lost in the Dark Dimensions was cancelled. However, the script was actually released online, and you'd be happy to know there are actually some fan animations out there. One of them I really enjoyed was by, I believe it was called Season 26B, I believe they're called. I could be wrong, but they've done a fantastic job at recreating the story to the best of their acknowledgement. This version of the 30th anniversary was actually supposed to be directed by Graham Williams, the director of Caves of Androzani, and would later go on to direct some future Doctor Who stories. However, sadly, that was cancelled. The idea then was basically by the BBC, it's like, right, we've actually got some of the BBC Doctor Who actors wanting to return. It's like, right, we're eager to return. And the 30th anniversary was coming up, was appearing. And I think it was John Nathan Turner's idea that to make it a Children in Need special, a short 2-part long special. I don't know who originally wrote it, but it was definitely not J&T because he turned it down. But one of the first ideas for the Children in Need special was a story called Destination Holocaust, which would have seen the 7th Doctor and the Brigadier tried to escape from a burning castle surrounded by Cybermen. Now, personally, just on that synopsis, I think that sounds really interesting and really dark themed, especially with the title and the burning castle being a setup for a very short Doctor Who story. There's no mention of Ace in this, so I don't know if she was supposed to appear in it or not. But John Nathan Turner quickly turned this down, thinking it was too dark for Children in Need. And it's here where he got his great idea, his spectacular idea, which would make or break his career. He asked the producers of the British soap drama EastEnders to do a crossover special. That was a thing. Yeah, the Children in Need special is a crossover with EastEnders, but not originally the idea that you had in mind. You see, the production actually did let them shoot, but only for one day, which means that they would have had half the shooting as what would actually happening. The original idea, the second idea for the Children in Need special was a story called Doctor Who Endgame. Like Avengers Endgame, but Doctor Who's Endgame. Which would have seen the Celestial Toymaker return and would put up the Doctors in a sort of carnival with the EastEnders being just a part of the story. But after Michael Gough, who played the Celestial Toymaker back in the first Doctor adventure, The Celestial Toy Room, said that there is no chance he would return to this. Whether this was due to Doctor Who's decline in popularity at the time, or whether he thought the story was genuinely bad, we have no idea. And then the third and final idea was a story called 3 Dimensions in Time, shortened to Dimensions in Time. The plan was, there's conflicting information, but the plan was to have the Master return, played by Anthony Ainley. According to JNT, John Nathan Turner, He asked but was turned down, and so the Rani was picked instead. However, according to Anthony Ainley, he was never asked and would have loved to return for the Children in Need special. So there we are, we're caught up. The Doctor Who the 30th anniversary would be a Children in Need story, being a crossover with the British soap drama EastEnders, making a sort of BBC cinematic universe before it was cool. It is important for us canon heads out there that this story has been generally ignored by both franchises in a very confusing, which I think is actually more confusing than them being a crossover together. Each of them later on have explained that they are fictional stories inside one another. In the Doctor Who story, Doomsday, I believe it was, they're watching an episode of EastEnders at one point, and in EastEnders, characters are seen going to a Doctor Who convention. So, wibbly wobbly, tiny whiny. I guess if you're a huge head canon kind of person like myself, you can work a way around this. I believe there are some novels that have actually stated that this is a dream of the Seventh Doctor, with some elements in it actually, in the story, actually justifying this. But the majority of fans consider this non-canonical. But what do I think? This is my show, after all, the Doctor Who Marathon. Personally, and I think a lot of people are going to hate me for this, I consider it canon. For the reason that EastEnders is in this, and EastEnders is also a TV programme in Doomsday, I just put it under wibbly wobbly tiny whiny. Or, I don't know, I just personally think that this story should be considered canon. Not to say that it's good. One of the main factors on why people don't like this so much is that the script is horrible. It feels like the script was written by a Doctor Who fan who has no experience in writing for any sort of programme. Which is kind of funny because it's JNT. A lot of it doesn't make sense. A lot of it, the plot is just all over the place. But my God, it is funny as hell. It's probably one of the most meme-worthy Doctor Who stories that we can tackle in this adventure. But what actually happens? The story starts off with none other than the Fourth Doctor in this weird vortex thing, in which he's talking to this mic, which is clearly due to the fact that nobody wanted to work with Tom Baker because of his huge ego, so he had to have like his own scenes separately. And he basically explains to he's trying to contact his other selves, the other Doctors, that the evil renegade Time Lord the Rani is trying to trap them in a time shenanigans, into a trap. What's the word? Apparently, Tom Baker hated the original script, so he just went on his own tangent, basically. And there's a really funny moment where he's like, the Rani is totally evil. She even hates children. Like, I don't know why he specifically notes that she hates children. Like, children are nowhere in the story, but it's really funny. We see then the Rani in her TARDIS, which is actually a mock-up of a fan convention TARDIS. And we see two horrible effects of the first and second Doctor's face just wobbling around, floating around in space. And she also has a companion. I can't remember who plays him. He's a very big actor now. But this character, he's only in it for like one scene. He is called Kellen. He's basically the Rani's companion. An interesting fact is that Kellen was named after the original actor who was meant to play him, Sir Ian McKellen. That's right, Ian McKellen was supposed to be in the charity event Dimensions in Time. Sorry, my brain's run. And the Rani is basically trying to get every species in the universe to feed her gigantic computer or something like that. As I've stated before with Rani stories, in Mark of the Rani, she kind of has, she is like evil, but she is kind of more innocent than we're used to expect. She doesn't seem to be out for the evilness to go there, but she's kind of persuaded by the Master to stop the Doctor and to help the Master. In Time and the Rani is basically full evil. Although she does have mentions of the fact that she's only really in it for the science, and that life is basically just an factor to her plans. Here, the Rani is pure evil and is just constantly trying to threaten Doctor with a gun, and it's like, you will never destroy my plans again. As she sends the two Doctors, the two first Doctors, into a time vortex where they are trapped for specifically 20 years, which he states will make him go mad. We don't actually know what that means. Obviously, the reasoning for their versions to be written off like this was because, sadly, William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton had passed away prior to this story. But the way they're written out makes absolutely no sense. And she fires a beam at the Doctor's TARDIS, which knocks him closer to a time vortex manipulated area. He was originally set off to the Great Wall of China. However, they end up at the East End. As the Seventh Doctor and Ace come out to the TARDIS, and they look around and they see that they are in, I can't remember what year they said they were in, 20 years from, I can't remember, I've completely lost it. And they're originally like, there's nobody here, where's everyone, what's happening? And suddenly a blash of light appears as we're suddenly in the set of EastEnders, theoretically. I mean, in the show, they're actually at the East End, wherever EastEnders is set. And the Doctor is now his sixth incarnation. And yeah, that's the majority of the plot now, is that these kind of bursts of time happen and characters keep switching places. So I think this is a good time to break down the story into its smaller segments. So let's talk about the EastEnders crossover. This would be something I think my mother would like. Me and my uncle were always huge fan of Doctor Who's, but my mother was a huge fan of the soap dramas. Specifically, she really likes EastEnders, so I don't know if she knows this, But if she knew that there was a crossover between Doctor Who and EastEnders, I think she would be absolutely thrilled by this. But are the universes so disconnected that they can't work? I don't know. For Doctor Who, I think it actually does really work. Doctor Who is always about exploring different worlds and cultures and going outside of its own setting to explore different settings. It's why I believe that you could basically have a Doctor Who story in any situation, in any setting. And to see the Doctor Who characters interact with EastEnders is really silly and stupid, and there's a lot of really cringy moments. But I don't think it's out to the realms of possibility that this crossover could have worked. The role, on the other hand, is not the same reversed. For those of you who don't know, EastEnders, well, if you live in Britain, you obviously know what EastEnders is. It's a soap drama, and it has no, huge fictional elements. The majority of plots revolve around people's families and their affairs and their betrayals and all these, shenanigans. It's pretty much the definition of drama. And so, like I said, there's no fictional, supernatural or science fiction elements revolving around EastEnders. So I don't know if I'm qualified to speak on behalf of the EastEnders viewpoint, as I wouldn't consider myself a fan. I do watch it from time to time, but I wouldn't consider myself a fan. But I wouldn't imagine it works particularly well. Just the idea of it. But now let's get on to one of the bigger critiques of this story, and that is the time hiccups. Basically, every minute or so, this flash of light appears, and the actor playing the Doctor, switches between the main four. The main four in the story, Tom Baker having only appeared at the very start, and I believe he appears right at the very end as well. So it switches between the 3rd, 5th, 6th and 7th Doctors as they navigate throughout the East End, trying to work out what's going on with time. And I think if they just kept it like that, there's not really much to complain about, to worry about. Although there are some really silly moments. For example, during the first time we see the 6th Doctor, one character of the EastEnders cast states that these new clothing will be really hip in the next year, in 1995, to which the Doctor is about to be like, hold on, what? But gets interrupted by this flash of light. And I think the idea of having this flash constantly happening every 2 or 3 seconds really jars with its plot and its pacing, which means that every time you keep trying to get into the story, it's like boom, another character, another Doctor, which I think is kind of shamed. And a lot of people will be disappointed, myself included, when I first watched this, that none of the Doctors interact with one another. It's only one Doctor at a time. However, the big concern and criticism, which I'm for the criticisms. I really don't understand this plot point in the story. The first time it happens, Ace stays the same. She stays as her character. But when the next time it happens, Mel comes out to appearance. Bonnie Lanford making her last appearance in a Doctor Who production on screen, and ironically enough, this would be her first time on the EastEnders set. She would later go on to become a recurring character in EastEnders. So that's a lot of fun behind the scenes information there. And it appears that she has the memories of Ace. So it's like, what the hell's going on? Is this time Getty turning Ace into the Doctor's previous companions? What's going on? Because sometimes they seem to remember certain details, and then other times, later on, it turns into Sarah Jane in the distant future, and she meets up with the third Doctor, and she seems to be surprised by the fact that the Doctor's there, despite the fact that she appearing so young, is actually in the future in terms of this story. It's also here, I think it's here that we get the iconic line where the Doctor's trying to find out the year, what year it is, and he's talking to these two women. I believe they're from EastEnders, and they've been given like old makeup, and we get it's just so iconic, John Pertwee turning to the camera and goes, "Madam, what year is this?" And then the women go, 2013! And then another time explosion happens. There's also Carol Ann Ford returning as Susan for one scene. And she seems to have no memory of what's going on. When she sees the Doctor, she's like, "You're not the Doctor, you're not my Doctor, where's the Doctor?" She calls out for Ian and Barbara. It's just that whole element with the companions is just so confusing, and I think this is the reason why so many people hate this story, is that what the hell's going on with the companions? Are all the companions caught up in the time loop? Are they the same person that are going through these different bodies, or is it all these different people actually appearing there? Because sometimes they seem to remember what's going on and realizing it's like, wait, something's wrong with time. I shouldn't be here. What's going on? And other times it's like none of them even acknowledging anything, and it's like they're surprised by the fact that this whole thing's happening, and they're meeting the Doctor again. Especially later down the line, which I'll talk about when I talk about the ending. But an important beat to this story, which I think is really is justified for this story. Actually, let's talk about the cliffhanger first, because we need to talk about the cliffhanger first. The Doctor, in his fifth incarnation, along with Nessa and Perry, basically realizes that they are caught in some kind of time issues, and that all of the Doctor's villains are out to get him. We see a Cyberman, we see a character from Terminus, we see Fifi from the Happiness Patrol, we see a bunch of different monsters, which I think is really it's clearly one of those moments where it seems like it's just like the fans would love it. Just chuck everything on it. It's the 30th anniversary. We don't give a flying arse. The fans want it, so the fans can have it. And the Doctor explains, it's like, right, someone extremely smart and a genius must be behind all this. And it is here that the Rani appears in EastEnders with a gun, threatening the Doctor. And is like, you will be going away, far away, where you will not interrupt my plans anymore. And that's our cliffhanger. During the airing of this, fans could actually vote on a pay telephone number, which was how they would fund children in need, which I believe Dimensions in Time actually raised £1,100 for children in need. So, like it or hate it, this story, a lot of people might not be alive today if it wasn't for the fact that dimensions in time was a thing. That's a thought that you put in your head. But fans could actually vote which EastEnders character would save the Doctor in a really silly scene in which they would Liz Shaw would run up to Rani and try to take her gun, but another character would walk in and tell it's like, what are you two fighting about? Stop attacking her. No need for the Rani to threaten this character with a gun and run off. The options were between a character called Big Ron and a character, I believe her name is Melissa, but I could be mistaken. And the votes went to the Melissa. For many years, it was believed that the Big Ron version never actually existed, and despite the viewers' votes going either way, they were always going to show this Melissa version. However, later on, some raw footage has actually been found of the Big Ron version. So, yeah, that theory has been debunked. That rumour has been debunked. That's very strange that we'd get a confirmation on something that happened like 30 years. Like this raw footage aired in like 2017, so that's like years after. And so, whilst the Doctor's trying to like hide and try to run away, Mike Yates actually appears on Bessie, and he takes the Doctor to meet an old friend, the Brigadier, to which another time flash happens. And this is what I was talking about, where I believe this bit was really justified, even if it was like a really terrible story, which it is. But this is the first and only on-screen meeting between the Brigadier and the 6th Doctor. So, yeah, we finally get to see Colin Baker and Nicholas Courtney meet up. That's a really cool little imagery. It's literally, the Brigadier's scene is literally a cameo, and he's working for UNIT, which is surprising, unless this scene takes place in the earlier editions of the timeline, because the timeline keeps moving to 1993, 2013, whatever 20 years is prior to 1973. There you go. And it keeps jumping between these 20-year gaps in a way. And yeah, there's a lot of just strange moments like that. The Doctor in his 7th incarnation finally finds the Rani's TARDIS, and out of nowhere, Leela just comes out of the Rani's TARDIS, and the Doctor's like, she let you go. And Leela's like, yes, she did, she let me go, but not before she cloned me and put the clone in this horrible bank of her computers. The Rani is worried that the Doctor's going to ruin her plans, but she lets somebody, like one of the Doctor's friends, just go like that. It's really strange. And the way it's portrayed, I always think, rewatching it, that there's going to be some sort of twist that, like, this is actually like the evil doppelganger, this is the clone. But no, nothing like that ever happens. What's even more confusing is that the Doctor is like, this is horrible, unless, and he asks Leela, what form were you before when she took you into the banks of computers? To which Leela replies, Romana. So she does remember being these other people. But then, why didn't Susan not remember being this being? What is going on? Doesn't make any sense. I don't understand it. It's just, what? Just, the whole thing with the companions is just utter, just nonsense. It's just utter nonsense. The reason why the companions change all the time, and that sometimes they seem to have memories and sometimes they don't, the reason is because John Nathan Turner had them on the payroll. That's it. That's the only explanation I can think of. The doctor states like, we got it. Because the Rani doesn't realise that Romana is a Time Lord, there are now actually 2 time brains inside Rani's banks, and soon it will overload, and the Doctor and Leela get into the TARDIS, and the Rani ship starts to explode, putting herself into the trap that originally she set up for the Doctor. So the Doctor did bloody nothing. If the Doctor wasn't involved in the story whatsoever, the Rani would have still collapsed upon herself. Although obviously the Doctor's plot isn't done yet. He gets Ace's help to try and fix all this technology together, to try and get themselves out of the time loop. As he focuses himself to connect with his other selves, as he gets a mind conference, as we see as like the different Doctors appearing and their faces, and the Doctor escapes, and the story ends with the Doctor basically explaining what happened to the Rani, to Ace, and that's Dimensions in Time, one of the most embarrassing, one of the most cringy, and one of the most ridiculous stories in all of Doctor Who. It's important to note, however, that this isn't a professionally made TV production. This was a small little short for the event Children in Need back in 1993, and it raised a lot of money for starving kids and kids that were in need of providence. So I don't think you can take it too hard to heart, but it's still a horrible piece of production, and I'm still going to critique it. It's all over the place. The story really doesn't know what to do with itself. The Rani's plan just makes no lick of sense. She traps the Doctor in this time vortex, then she goes in to try and push him even further, I guess, into the trap. And because she was basically a complete idiot who didn't realise that the Doctor has also travelled with the Time Lord, does she then get herself into her own trap? The whole thing with the time thing, and like I said, none of the Doctors interact with one another, and the whole plot with the companions really doesn't make any sense, and it's just embarrassing. It's just a really embarrassing idea. The concept of Doctor Who crossing over with EastEnders was just such a what the hell moment. Was there anybody in the world that was craving for this spin-off, for this crossover event? No, there was no one who asked for this. John Nathan Turner, that's who, because he thought there was going to be good publicity. Thing to note about this story. This story was made for the charity event Children in Need. And because of that, one of the agreements was that this story can never be shown again for any professional use, so that the BBC can't make any money off it and nobody else. Which means technically you can't watch this story legally. You can find it on YouTube. It's very easily accessed. A lot of fans have put it on YouTube, on Dailymotion, but officially you can't watch it, and technically the copies on YouTube are on the internet illegally. Think about that. If you watch Dimensions in Time, you're breaking the law. That's how bad this story is. But yeah, there you go. That's Dimensions in Time. So join me next time where the Doctor and Ace will meet up with some familiar foes and meet a new friend. So join me next time for The Harvest. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra!